Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into something that is so fundamental to our daily lives, yet we almost never stop to question where it actually came from. We are exploring the surprisingly ancient and deeply biological origins of why we have best friends.
Right off the bat, I want you to take a second and picture your actual best friend. And I don't mean an acquaintance from work or, just someone whose posts you occasionally like on social media. I mean your person, the one who knows things about you that absolutely nobody else knows, the one you immediately text before you've even fully processed a piece of good or bad news. Think about that deeply specific, honestly kind of irrational human need to have one person or maybe a tiny handful of people who exist in a completely different category from everyone else in the world. Seriously, where did that capacity even come from?
Well, there's a really profound contradiction at the heart of this whole thing. On one hand, we know exactly what deep friendship feels like, right? It's comforting, it's emotional, it's absolutely essential to our happiness. But if you look at it from a purely biological perspective, pouring that much time and emotional energy into one specific person makes absolutely zero immediate survival sense. Think about it. A best friend doesn't magically help you run faster from a saber-toothed tiger. They don't guarantee you food, and they don't guarantee you shelter. Biologically speaking, it seems like an impractical, energy-draining luxury, and yet, every single human culture on Earth across literally every period of human history repeats this exact same pattern. We all choose one person above all others who simply matters more. To figure out why, we have to look way back into the past.
So, let's get into Section 1, Evidence in the Bones, specifically looking at prehistoric campsites. Let's see what the dirt actually tells us about how early humans lived together.
When researchers study these prehistoric campsites, they consistently find something that just stops them cold. They don't just find random groupings of people who hung out in a tribe purely because they happen to be near each other. No, they find hard evidence of deliberately chosen associations. We're talking about the exact same genetic signatures huddled around the exact same fireplaces, not just once but across years and decades. We see the very same distinct tool-making styles popping up together repeatedly over a lifetime. And then, when death finally came, they found specific individuals deliberately buried side by side. Basically, ancient humans had people they preferred, people they actively sought out and continuously returned to no matter what.
And that, my friends, brings us to a massive paradigm shift. Friendship is not some modern cultural invention. It isn't just a social nicety that humans dreamed up after civilization made survival easy enough that we could suddenly afford the luxury of hanging out. No, friendship is a hardwired, deeply ingrained biological drive. Which leads us perfectly into Section 2, the biology of connection, focusing on the neuroscience of loneliness. To really grasp how deep this biological drive goes, we need to look at the groundworking work of neuroscientist John Cacioppo. Cacioppo spent decades studying social connection, and his conclusion was stark, it was unambiguous, and it leaves us with one incredibly staggering number: 15. Humans who lack deep social bonds, like genuine close relationships, suffer severe, measurable physical health consequences. In fact, loneliness literally kills people at rates comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Crazy, right?
So the crucial point here is that this isn't just some poetic metaphor. It is pure physiology. As you can see, existing without deep friendship leads to elevated cortisol, disrupted sleep, compromised immune function, and even accelerated cognitive decline. But when you have those chosen bonds, when another person truly knows you and chooses to stick by you anyway, it produces measurable, real-world biological benefits. We're talking lower inflammation, better cardiovascular health, a much stronger immune response, and a longer life overall. Your best friend isn't just emotionally important for venting. They are quite literally keeping you alive.
All right, let's move on to Section 3, the survival inner circle, where we'll unpack Robin Dunbar's theory.
Now, you might know Robin Dunbar from his famous work studying the cognitive limits of human social groups, but he also looked really closely at what kinds of relationships we actually maintain, and he found that within every single human group, regardless of the culture or the historical period, there is an inner circle. Now, this isn't necessarily your family, it's definitely not the most powerful members of the tribe, and it's not even your most useful political allies. It is simply a tiny, deeply chosen group of people selected over and over again without any obvious rational justification. They are the people who will actually show up for you when it costs them something. Ultimately, they are your primary unit of practical survival.
And get a load of this. That vital inner circle is shockingly small. We're talking just 2 to 5 people. That tiny little fraction represents the individuals whose opinions matter more to you than everyone else's combined. In ancient times, this was the person you shared your food with when food was terrifyingly scarce. It was the person you stayed awake beside when falling asleep meant you literally might not survive the night. Ancient best friendship wasn't a luxury. It was the absolute most important strategic relationship a human being could possibly have.
Let's step even further back for Section 4, the primate predecessors, an ancient legacy. To truly understand how deep this evolutionary drive goes, we just have to look at our closest living relatives, chimpanzees. They show the exact same drive. They maintain these long-term preferential bonds across decades. Out of their whole troop, they seek out highly specific individuals just for grooming. They respond far, far more intensely to the distress calls of their chosen companions compared to others. And when they're separated, they show measurable signs of what we can really only describe as missing one another. They don't maintain these bonds because the group demands it. They do it because something deep, deep in their biology drives them towards specific, chosen connection.
So, piecing this all together, the capacity for best friendship definitely did not begin with modern humans living in civilized cities. It stretches back tens of thousands of years to those ancient hunter-gatherer campsites we talked about, and even further, millions of years to the shared ancestors of humans and chimpanzees. This incredibly high-stakes need for connection has been evolving for an unimaginably long time. Which brings us to this incredibly profound realization. In a dangerous, high-stakes ancient world full of constant threats, small groups, and sheer unpredictability, ancient humans needed best friends the exact same way they needed fire and food, not as a comfort, as survival infrastructure. The literal difference between surviving a crisis and perishing often came down to whether one specific person decided to stand beside you when everything else went wrong.
And that leaves us with a pretty beautiful thought to close out our explainer today. Somewhere, hundreds of thousands of years ago, around a tiny fire in the absolute pitch dark, two ancient humans sat beside each other. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Because out of everyone else in that whole tribe, they had chosen each other. The exact same way you chose your best friend, and the exact same way they chose you. So the next time you're sitting beside your person, whether you're deep in an intense conversation or just sitting together in comfortable silence, I want you to ask yourself, what ancient fire are you sitting around? You are actively participating in one of the oldest survival mechanisms we have. Something built into your very bones that kept your ancestors alive and, quite literally, is still keeping you alive today. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.